Hello and welcome to Kindful Living. If you don't know who I am already, my name is Zara and I'm a child and family therapist as well as a mama to 2 boys under the age of 2. I make videos about how to live a kind and mindful life. Today's video is the birth story of my 2 sons, who were both actually born via emergency C-sections just 15 months apart. I really wanted to share my birth story after I had my eldest son, Zane, because while I was pregnant with him, I had watched lots of videos on YouTube and read lots of blogs and accounts written by women about their birth stories, and I found it really helpful in preparing for my birth. Although it's not possible to be completely prepared for birth, and I definitely know that now after having 2 emergency C-sections. You can pack your bags, you can have a birth plan, all that, but when nature calls, nature calls. I just found it really helpful to kind of understand what the possibilities were of what could happen, as well as how women dealt with unexpected and unknown variables and obstacles during their pregnancies as well as their labor. So I really wanted to share my story, just didn't know what platform to share it on, but now that I have this channel, I thought this would be a really good opportunity for me to share my story so that any women that are watching, that are expecting, as well as their partners, can learn from my story and perhaps consider one possibility of how children might come into this world. So with my first son, Zane, I actually was just at the hospital for a routine ultrasound and checkup, and at the end of the checkup, the doctor told me to put my clothes back on, and then as I was getting ready to kind of leave, he's like, "You're having a baby today." And I was like, "What? Am I in labor?" I had no signs of labor. I felt absolutely fine. And he said, "Well, actually, your amniotic fluid levels are really, really low, and it's dangerous for us to kind of let the baby stay in your womb under those conditions. So you have 2 options. We can either induce labor, and you can try for a vaginal birth, or we can schedule a C-section in a few hours." So my plan initially was to have a vaginal unmedicated birth to make it as natural as possible. However, this was the farthest thing from what happened. After talking to the doctor about the pros and cons of inducing labor so that I could hopefully have a vaginal birth versus scheduling a C-section in a few hours, I decided to go with the induction, because at that point there was no risk to the baby if I waited a little bit longer and tried to go through it that route. So I was pumped up with a whole bunch of drugs. They put me on Pitocin through an IV, and we waited, and I started dilating. It was actually really, really painful. I never knew. No one ever prepared me for this induction idea. I'd heard about it, but I never knew how painful it actually was. The worst part was when the nurses would come in every hour or so to check how far dilated I was, and oh my God, that was excruciating pain. I never knew the human hand could go so far up a woman's private parts. So needless to say, I did learn that the hard way, and was in labor for about 24 hours. And as you know, each hour passed on, I became even weaker and weaker. They don't let you eat or drink anything other than water. So I was just basically losing energy at that point. So after about a day of being in active labor, I was advised by the doctor to have a C-section. And at that point, they basically said the baby's heart rate has decelerated, and it is probably going to be risky, or actually it is going to be risky if we wait any longer. So I decided to, follow the doctor's orders. I signed some papers, and within a couple of hours, I gave birth to a healthy 6-pound baby boy early, albeit, but he was born healthy and there were no further complications after that. Me and my partner actually chose not to find out the gender of the baby, so it was a big surprise for everyone that it was a boy, but for me it really wasn't, because I had had dreams that it was a boy all along. I just had this really, really strong sense that I was having a boy. So when I met him, I instantly I fell in love with him. I was in awe, I was happy. All that pain, going through labor and then an emergency C-section was well worth it. It felt like the moment that they put him in my arms. And that was that. So the first day, the day of the C-section, after the C-section, for both of my births was actually very similar. The awe and the amazement of having given birth, of becoming a mother, even becoming a mother for the second time, in addition to all the drugs they had pumped me with, kind of clouded the reality of all the trials and tribulations my body had gone through. So I wasn't able to fully appreciate how much I had really endured. first day is kind of not even something that I can remember entirely, which is really unfortunate. Part of the reason I wanted to have an unmedicated birth, because I had heard from other women that had C-sections or who did have medicated births that, you know, they didn't really feel everything they had hoped to feel, that they felt kind of numb to what was going on. And I think that would be a really good way to explain how I was feeling. So that was the first day, and then the second day, as soon as the meds, the painkillers started to wear off, I was actually given the option of taking more pain meds, but I was worried about them going into my bloodstream, so I opted not to. I did take a couple of Tylenols and Advils, but I didn't take anything prescribed by the doctor. Tried to tough it out. And so, yeah, the meds wore off by the second day, and then the catheter was pulled out. And at that point, I literally felt like I had been violently gutted and haphazardly put back together. It was so painful. My body was sore, it hurt, it was inflamed, swollen. I couldn't even adjust my position in my hospital bed without help. It hurt to sneeze, it hurt to cough, it hurt to try and pick up my baby without asking someone for help. It was really, really difficult. I needed help to just walk to the washroom. I needed help to pull down my underpants. I needed help to bend down and sit on the toilet, help to get back up from the toilet. I literally couldn't even wiggle my toes. It felt like my upper body and my lower body were disconnected. Even laughing felt like it was self-inflicted torture. I didn't want to do anything. I literally needed help to do everything, and it was not what I had imagined becoming a mother would feel like. I thought it would be really joyful, and it was to have my baby, but to have gone through all that and to have felt the way I did and required so much assistance from everyone and anyone that would provide it really wasn't something that I thought, you know, was gonna happen. It was something that no one actually prepared me for. I knew a C-section was a major surgery. They have to cut through various layers to get to the baby, but I wasn't actually aware that it was so painful and so debilitating for women. So needless to say, I was in a lot of pain the second day. The third day, at the risk of sounding vain, but wanting to be brutally honest, when they removed my bandage from my C-section incision, oh my goodness, let me tell you, I saw that C-section shelf, as they call it, which is basically this flab that sits right on top of your C-section incision, and it looks like, I don't know, it looks like a Pillsbury roll. Basically, it's, you know, your uterus is inflamed still, it's still sore because it hasn't gone down. You just gave birth and carried this huge baby inside of it. Even though my baby wasn't so huge, he was still big enough to expand it. So, you know, you have a swollen uterus, you have more inflammation because you just had a surgery, you're retaining all these liquids, and it's just, you know, this chunk of flesh that sits there. And I guess for me, I was feeling super traumatized because I was in almost the best shape of my life prior to getting pregnant with Zane. So it was really hard to look at my belly and to see not only that I still looked 5 or 6 months pregnant, but that I had this really unsightly bulge. And I was convinced my body would never look or feel or operate the same way again. And it was really, really difficult, both physically and emotionally, to reconcile with that. So to make matters worse, after I was discharged from the hospital, so I was admitted on the Friday, I had the baby on the Saturday, and I was discharged on the Monday in the afternoon. After I went home, I basically ended up back in emergency on Tuesday morning and spent the whole day there with just a 4-day-old baby at home. It felt like I had some metal object, like maybe a scalpel, left inside from the surgery, and I was in so much pain. I couldn't sit, I couldn't do anything, literally. Like, it hurt to just be alive. So my partner took care of my son, my 4-day-old son, while I spent the entire day in emergency. Thank goodness they didn't leave something behind, but what had happened was that my intestines were super inflamed just from being pulled out during the operation and then being put back in. They take a few days to reset. I also hadn't passed enough gas and passed a bowel movement yet. So what had happened is that there was a whole bunch of stuff that needed to just kind of find its way out of my body and stuff that needed to get more adjusted in my body that was causing this super painful sensation. So they were able to help me in the emergency. They gave me some like high quality stool softeners. I passed a lot of gas. I had my first bowel movement, and a couple of days later I was feeling a lot better. But it was really, really difficult because I hadn't anticipated this over medicalized birth with my son, and no one actually prepared me for what was about to happen when I signed those papers for the C-section. So I really thought, I need to share this story because I'm not sure how many people know that having a C-section, let alone a C-section after laboring for a little over a day, how difficult it is and how traumatizing it actually is. Because when I left the hospital, I wasn't even sure how I was going to take care of this baby. I mean, I could barely take care of myself. I couldn't take care of myself. I was so lucky for my family. Because it was an emergency C-section, I didn't even have my hospital bag, which I had packed from like 5 months with me. I had to use what the hospital provided, and my baby's having lots of fun. So I basically, used what the hospital provided. My mom and my sister came as soon as they could, which was a few hours after my son was born. My partner also was at the hospital waiting for them to come so that he could go home and walk our dog. He stayed at the hospital with me the entire time, which was great. I had a lot of support. But if it wasn't for my family, I probably wouldn't have been able to get through it as easily as I did. As for my second birth story, I had just turned 8 months pregnant on a Saturday. It was a Saturday morning, and me, my partner, and my son Zane just finished breakfast. I got up from our kitchen table and was making my way to the washroom when I was struck with really, really severe back pain. So I told my partner, something doesn't feel right, I don't feel very good. And he said, just sit down, relax, take it easy. I was getting a lot bigger at that point very quickly, so it was hard to just move around, but I was really active, still working out, had done a Zumba class the night before, I believe. So was feeling good enough to be able to do that. But anyways, so I finished my breakfast, got up, and I was like, no, don't want to be late to the swimming class. So I proceeded to go to our room to get ready, and as I walked into my bedroom, I felt a gush of fluid. So I'm like, great, my water just broke, and I'm only 8 months pregnant. When I looked down, I was in absolute shock. I saw bright red blood, and it was spewing out of me. It wasn't just trickling like you see, water trickling in the movies. I knew it wasn't my water that had broken. I was confident it wasn't my water because it was bright red blood, and I knew it wasn't supposed to look like that. There was also little bits of mucus in it, and it just didn't look like things were okay. I was panicking. So I basically just called my partner. He saw what was happening, and he called my mom and called 911 right away. An ambulance made it to our house within 15 minutes. While I was waiting for the ambulance to come, I was advised by the 911 operator to lie down on my left side with my legs elevated. That was supposed to help with the bleeding, but it really didn't. I was just losing massive amounts of blood and was actually feeling faint. I was in and out of consciousness because I was losing so much blood. I was sure that this was not a good sign, and I'm worrying on top of it and not sure what's happening with the baby or my own health. So the ambulance came, and I was at the hospital in another 15 minutes. So half an hour after I started bleeding, I was in the hospital. I got admitted right away, and within the hour I gave birth to a premature but completely healthy 5-pound little boy. With the second pregnancy, I actually wasn't sure if it was a boy or a girl. I didn't find out the gender for either of my children. We wanted to keep that a surprise, or I should say the biological sex. And the first time, like I said, I was completely sure it was a boy. Second time, I wasn't sure at all. But we found out, a couple of hours after giving birth that I had a placental abruption, which is when the placenta starts to fall away, and it detaches itself from your uterus. So it's actually really, really fatal most times. We were super lucky. God is so great. I was so humbled by that experience because by all standards, or by all regular occurrences, we shouldn't have come home with a baby, let alone a healthy baby that had no further complications. We were literally discharged earlier than I was with Zane, who was born further along than Ian, who was just born at 8 months. So he was really healthy and happy, and I was able to feed him in the hospital, and he ate well, and we were discharged. His APGAR test results were all great. He did fantastic. Hearing tests, everything. He did absolutely great. Other than being a tiny little guy, he was healthy. So the first day, like I said, was the same with both pregnancies, in a hazy fog, not really sure what was happening, totally in awe of becoming a mother again. Really traumatized though by what had happened. I kept thinking about what could have happened, and I tried to stop myself every time I had those thoughts. I was really upset about what had happened. I wasn't sure why it happened, and I kept asking questions, and the doctors and nurses were just, basically telling me that my placenta and my amniotic sac and whatnot had been sent over to pathology, and we were awaiting results. I actually haven't ever found out till today what happened. The tests were inconclusive. However, on that first day, I was having mixed feelings. Like, I was so happy that my son was healthy and that I had him in my arms and he was so beautiful. But at the same time, I really was distraught because of what had occurred, and not feeling so good because it was determined I had lost at least 1,500 cc's of blood, so lots of blood. That was the first day. Second day, they basically took out the catheter, and I was walking around the hospital. I was able to pick up my baby from the bassinet when he cried. I even took a shower later in the evening of the second day. It was completely like, the nurses were like, "Did you just have a C-section, an emergency C-section at that?" And I was like, yeah, I feel really good. And it might have been because I knew what to expect from the first pregnancy, but I think a lot more of it had to do with the fact that I was a lot more physically active and healthy through my second pregnancy. So with my first pregnancy with Zane, I couldn't maintain my physical activity after like the third or fourth month. I was so sick. Even in the beginning, I was so sick with all-day sickness. And then thereafter I developed carpal tunnel, and I had lots of swelling and a whole bunch of different things pregnancy related that made it really difficult. Sciatic pain, that was really bad. So couldn't really stay active, even though being active might have helped a lot of those issues, but just wasn't an option. The second time around, I don't know if it's because I just had an easier pregnancy or because I had a toddler to chase around that I didn't have time to be sick, but I was really healthy. I ate well, I exercised right till the day before I had Ion, and I felt really good. So I think it was a combination of knowing what to expect and being a lot more physically active through my pregnancy that helped me have a really quick recovery at the hospital. I was discharged on the third day, and I went home, and it was like I never had a surgery. I even managed to pass gas without any pain and to have a bowel movement all by the time I was discharged from the hospital. I had learned from the first time to drink a lot more water, to eat a lot more fiber. I requested some stool softeners at the hospital, which did help. I was moving around, which they say to walk around after you have the surgery. So the second day of a C-section, they're like, walk around. The first time with Zane, I was like, who are they talking to? How am I supposed to walk around? I can't even wiggle my toes. I could barely feel my legs. Like, I felt totally disconnected from my lower body. It probably would have helped if I walked right away, because I hear from doctors and nurses that that's kind of what helps you to get back on your feet quicker when you start moving around. But I couldn't find it in me, and I was actually wheeled out of the hospital in a wheelchair the first time. The second time I was carrying the diaper bag, and you're not allowed to carry anything heavy, but I was fully capable of just kind of walking around and doing things. And like I said, I took a shower. I was feeling really good. So that was my physical response to having 2 emergency C-sections. As I mentioned earlier on, they were just 15 months apart. So I got pregnant really quickly after I had Zane, which worked out great, but didn't let my body heal as much as it needed to. So I did have a little bit of a rougher time in terms of gaining back my lower body strength the second time around, and I'm still working on it because my son's just 5 months old. But I have definitely found that my mental space, my mental energy is a lot more prepared, and I was a lot better off coming home and taking care of a toddler and a newborn than I was when I came home with just a newborn, if that makes any sense. I came home feeling a lot physically stronger, even though there were some setbacks that were more significant, like my lower body strength taking a little bit more time. So that was my physical response. As far as my emotional experience goes, it was really hard for me to have to ask for help for literally everything. If it wasn't from my partner Varun, it was the nurses or my sister or my mom or whoever was at the hospital. I literally needed help to do everything the first time. The second time wasn't so bad, but I still needed lots of help. And for anyone that knows me, they know how strong-willed I am and how much I like to do everything for myself and how much I have difficulty asking for help. So it was really, really hard for me actually, but it was a good lesson for me because what I learned having these 2 C-sections was that the idea of being independent is an absolute myth. It doesn't make sense, it's not possible, it's not real. I've always been very, very keen on doing things for myself. What having 2 C-sections taught me was that there is a reason there are billions of people in this world. We're not meant to do things in isolation. We need each other for physical health, for emotional health. It's just not possible to do everything by ourselves and to be self-sufficient. So it was a hard pill for me to swallow, but it was something that I had to accept. And I think it was something that made me a better mother and it made me stronger because once my children started to get older and I needed help with, taking them places or doing things for them or even just so that I could get stuff done for myself, I've had no issue asking for help, whereas prior to having kids I would cringe at the thought of having to ask someone. And I think it was just that idea of being vulnerable, of having to rely on someone else and to have to listen to their response, because I would probably have felt embarrassed if they said no, whereas now if someone's like, no, I can't do it, I just ask someone else and not take it personally, realizing that just because someone can't help you doesn't mean someone else can't help you. So I learned a lot from that in particular. It was also really difficult for me, especially with the first C-section, because I felt like my body had failed me. I now know in retrospect that my body did anything but failed me. It let me carry 2 beautiful, smart, healthy, kind boys in my belly. It helped to support their life. It allowed me to nourish them. I nursed both my sons for as long as I could with the first one because I did stop producing milk at some point in my pregnancy, but I'm still nursing my second son right now. And I realized my body didn't fail me. It just didn't allow me to do what I had, I guess, hoped for it to allow me to do, which was to have this unmedicated vaginal birth. But that's not the end of the world. And at first it was difficult because I wanted to have, a very simple and natural birth experience, but it was what it was. And if it wasn't for these emergency C-sections, my sons would probably not be here and I might not be here. So I'm really, really grateful to the medical system, even though I initially did feel like my body had failed me. I was also really, really exhausted, and as the hormones sort of leveled out in my system, I had some days where I was really, really feeling low. Like I said, I had lots of support, but with the first pregnancy, having to kind of go through that emotional roller coaster after giving birth, especially the 3rd and the 4th days, were really, really difficult. On top of it, having to deal with all the physical pain. It wasn't easy, but if it wasn't for the support of my family, like I said, I don't know how I could have gotten through it. So for everyone and anyone watching this who may be having a baby anytime in the near future, make sure you have your support networks sorted out. It's more important than packing everything right in your hospital bag. It's more important than making sure you have the right obstetrician and the right hospital chosen. Having the right support network is literally life changing, and it is the difference between feeling prepared and being prepared. I guess as far as the physical aspects are concerned, any advice that I could give to any moms who are having either elective or emergency C-sections is to ensure you drink lots and lots of water while you're in the hospital. There's no such thing as too much water. Make sure you walk around, even though it feels impossible, walk around. Take the stool softeners they give you and make sure that you feel like you are able to go home before you let them discharge you. Some hospitals are really quick to want to discharge women once they've given birth. But if you feel something is wrong, like in the case of my first birth, where I ended up back in the hospital for an entire day after being discharged, don't let them discharge you. Let them know that you'd rather wait till you pass a stool, or that you need the support, and don't feel ashamed to do it. There's nothing wrong with asking for help, and if it's something that you feel that you need, then you make a case for it, and hopefully the nurses and your medical team will be able to hear you out and to respect your wishes. So yeah, that's all for my video today. I am really, really grateful, like I said, for the advent of hospitals and ultrasound machines and all the technology that allowed me to bring my 2 beautiful boys into this world. I don't know what would have happened if I wasn't able to have that ultrasound with Zane, and if I wasn't able to have these 2 C-sections, because in all honesty, it was it was a really difficult time for me, having to live in that uncertainty of how my babies were doing and if they would be born healthy and if they would be okay. So super grateful to my medical team as well as my friends and family. I'm wanting to make a follow-up to this video, a part 2, about what I did after I got home to help me recover. And it's probably going to be more focused on my second time around, because I literally, like I said, was able to get back on my feet faster than I thought or even others thought would be possible or imaginable. And I look and feel better. I'm stronger both mentally and physically than I was even before I gave birth to my first son. So having gone through 2 emergency C-sections in 15 months, and raising a toddler who's not even 2, as well as a 5-month-old baby, you wouldn't imagine someone could say that, but I have enough energy that I wake up every morning at 6, 7 o'clock. I have enough energy that I wake up every morning, I take care of my children, I exercise, I shower every day, I have time to make YouTube videos, time to blog, time to grow my business, time to socialize, spend time with friends and family, to meditate, to do all that good stuff. And a lot of people are like, do you really have kids at home? And are you really taking care of them? And I'm like, yeah. So I would love to do a video on how I not only recovered physically, but how I take care of not only on how I recovered in the physical sense, but also what I did and what I'm still doing to recover. And I'm hoping in that video to focus on breathing exercises that I started right in the hospital, in terms of gaining my core strength, and very simple physiotherapy exercises that I also completed in the hospital, what I did when I got home that allowed me to get back in the gym as soon as I was cleared to do so at 6 weeks. Not to mention that I have lost over half of the weight that I put on. I gained a lot of weight with my first pregnancy because, like I said, I wasn't able to stay physical. So I gained a total of about 80 pounds, and I only lost about 55 of those pounds before I got pregnant again. And then I put on another 25 or so pounds this pregnancy. So I've lost more than half of that already at 5 months. And it's not even the weight, I think, that is a concern to me. It's how I look and feel. And although I feel I have a way to go, I would like to, gain more muscle mass, lose some fat so that I can be healthier. I literally and absolutely feel stronger and better than I have in a long time. So yeah, that's my, stop. So that's the video for today. I hope you enjoyed watching. If any of you have had a C-section, especially an emergency C-section, please let me know how you felt afterwards and what you did to recover, what lessons you learned, and you can comment down below. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, give it a thumbs up, and share. If you want to see more content like this in the future and are eager to see the part 2 of this, please subscribe to this channel and make sure that you turn your alerts on so that you can be notified when I post a new video. Thanks again so much for watching. I hope you guys all have a great day.